Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend John Opalewski. You look tan, John. Have you been doing something besides hanging out in Michigan lately?
Yes, Jim. Yes, yes, yes. Laura and I had an amazing 4 week break
Oh man.
this year in Florida. And I mean, we spent a glorious month, man, by the ocean, enjoying warm weather, sunshine, a lot of waves, and
Right on.
a very relaxed pace. And I was a little more tan 3 weeks ago when we actually got back. Back here in Michigan, I've got a little bit of
Yeah.
sun since I've been back, but not as much. And you know, Jim, it seems like every year when I go on vacation, I don't go on vacation thinking, okay, God's going to give me amazing insights this
Hmm.
time, and you know, I've got my journal ready, and I'm ready for God to just download. It just happens,
Right.
and um,
Mhm.
and in surprising ways, and so yeah, God dropped a few thoughts into my mind and heart, and uh, what I'd like to do is take today and then next week to unpack six. Now the
Right
Lord gave
on.
me more than six. It was quite a prolific time
Yeah.
away in terms of just some downloads from the Lord. So I'm not going to share all of them, but I've got six. So I'd like to take three today and
Love it.
then do three next week.
I love it. All right. What's number one?
Here we go. The first one is we are often more tired than we realize.
Yeah. Yes, we
Um,
are.
Jim, I shouldn't be surprised by that, right? But
Yeah.
we got to the condo and um, day two, I realized once I got out of the fray how tired I was. You know, when you're in the middle of work and you're knocking things off your to-do list and you see the ball moving down the field and God's moving and doing great things, there's almost this
Mhm.
adrenaline uh, infusion that you get that
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
masks
Yeah.
weariness
Yeah.
in a way. And and so, I mean, I should know this, right? I should be aware of it. Shouldn't be surprising, but you know, for the first week, uh, I was averaging, I don't know, almost 8 hours of sleep every night, which is unheard of for me.
Yeah.
I shoot for between 6 to 8, but I'm almost
Right
always
on.
on the lower end of that.
Yeah.
Um, but not only was I sleeping 8 hours a night, I found myself uh, taking several unplanned naps. You know, just
Right on. Yeah.
it was like, hey, I got 8 hours of sleep. Why am I napping? Well,
Yeah.
you know, and so I think we're often more tired, Jim, than we
Yeah.
know. And sometimes I wonder if other people see that in us before we do.
Mhm.
Wonder what you think
Yeah.
about this first
Yeah,
one.
I think what you're describing, I would call is, how do you feel today? I feel fine. I feel normal. I feel like I feel, but then, like you say, you go away and get some rest. And you go, I can't remember the last time I felt like this.
Yeah.
Feeling really good, or feeling really well is abnormal, I think, for most people,
Mm.
because underneath my desk right now, you can't see her. I have a 4.5 month old puppy that at 1 o'clock this morning decided it was time to get up. We've slept enough. It is time to go play. So I'm compensating now with this to make me feel normal, right? So I've got my 2 shots of espresso and some steamed milk. I'm sitting at my desk. I'm enjoying a conversation, and I feel normal. But I know that if I went away for a week, which I'm doing here in about a week and a half, the puppy is not coming with me. The
Yes.
grandkids are, so I might not sleep, but the puppy's not
Right.
coming with me, and I'll be back to, like you're saying, the 8 hours of sleep. And by the time we come back, I go, man, I forgot how good it feels to feel good.
Yes.
But I think something maybe for us to be listening as you talked about this is like make sure your normal is God's normal, because it may be a long ways from a healthy normal, even though it feels normal to you.
That's right. You know, I think sometimes until we step away from the fray, we often overlook our need for rest.
Yeah,
It's just uncanny, you know,
yeah,
the way God created our body is so amazing.
mm,
And there are these hormones,
mm.
cortisol and
Cortisol. Yeah,
uh, adrenaline, and things that are given to us for certain moments of
Yeah.
time. But what
Right.
begins to happen, I think, if we keep pushing and pushing and pushing, is those get released more often than they're supposed to, and
Yes.
we get used to them. We get almost
Yeah.
addicted to
Addicted.
them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, Jim, I think that's one reason why God
Mm.
puts so much emphasis on Sabbath.
Yeah.
I
Reset.
mean, from the
Yeah.
very beginning of time, before the old covenant was even established,
Yeah.
Sabbath was established very strongly.
Right.
And we
Mm.
see it all throughout Scripture, Old Testament,
Yeah.
New Testament. We see the effects of people who are somewhat even rigid about observing Sabbath. They live longer. We
Hmm.
said, I think, a couple of podcasts ago, Seventh-day Adventists live on
Yeah.
average 10 years longer than the general population.
Wow.
And
Wow. That's amazing.
I don't know, there could be multiple contributors to that. I'm sure there
Sure.
probably is, but I do happen to believe that that attentiveness to that weekly
Hmm.
reset button has a
Yeah.
lot to do with it. And so, Pastor, we want to encourage you to rest well, to Sabbath well, to
Yes.
do things that actually fill up your tank. And if you don't know what those things are, you've got some homework to do.
Right.
I know what they are. Seeing water, walking on the beach,
Yeah.
unbelievable. Now,
Yeah.
but I don't live by the beach and I don't live by water.
Mm.
So there are other things that I have to do when I'm not around water that help me operate on a fuller tank. So, Pastor,
Yeah.
you're probably more tired than you realize.
Yeah.
So, care for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you have a vacation coming up and you get there and you feel like I'm so stinking tired, that's probably a normal reaction to,
Yeah.
you've probably been pushing too hard. So, Jim,
Yeah.
that's the first thing that kind of popped into me.
I
Man,
love it.
I am more tired than I knew I was.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that affects everything, doesn't it? I mean, the next thing you're going to talk about is I'll let you introduce it, but I know being tired affects the second thing. The first thing has an effect on the second
Mhm.
thing. Yeah.
100% right. And here's the second insight
Yeah.
is that we periodically have to fight for the important relationships in our life.
Yeah.
The first day we arrived uh, at our destination in Florida, the first thing I always like to do once we get all of the stuff into the condo
Hmm.
is I say, honey, just let me have 30 minutes on the
Hmm.
patio and let me look at that water and listen to the waves.
Yeah.
Uh,
Love it.
and so and that particular day, the waves were relentless. Every day in the Atlantic, the
Mhm.
waves, they never stop. They just
Yeah.
vary in size. But the pounding of those waves on the beach, I'm just watching that, mesmerized, Jim.
Right.
And then this
Mm.
thought dropped into my heart that we need to put sustained effort
Hmm.
into our marriage,
Yeah.
into our children, into our grandchildren.
Hmm.
Some of us may be struggling with some relationships in our life, maybe some important relationships in our life.
Yeah.
And we're wondering, man, how hard do I have to work
Mm.
to get healthy here? And the answer is very hard.
Yeah. As hard as it takes, right? Yeah. Whatever that
That's
means. Yeah.
that's right. And so I'm watching those waves and I'm thinking, are there relationships in my life that either I've neglected
Hmm.
or that have gotten difficult
Hmm.
and I've decided, well, I'm just going to put that one on the side. I'm not going to work hard at that. I'm just going to, and I would say to you that um, there are times when you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and you're going to have to fight for the most important relationships in your life. And when you're tired,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's very difficult to do that. So, Jim, give me some. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I like the phrase emotional capital. You need a certain amount of
Hmm.
something inside of you to begin to address because you don't know when you try to work on the relationship if it blows up or it blows over, right? You don't know if it's a
Right.
breakdown or a breakthrough. And so you have to have this, either way it goes, I have what it takes as a man, as a husband, as a wife, as a spouse to, once this is addressed, if it goes south for a little while, that's okay because I have what it takes to bring it back. Because you don't want to start a fight that you can't resolve. So I think back to that rest, back to that vision of what life is supposed to be, and keeping that in front of you. Because if you don't keep the ideals, the biblical ideals in front of you, if you're not living by design, you're living by default. And default has a certain tax to it, right? There's going to be a, I like Dave Ramsey calls it the stupid tax. You ever heard that? Where you
Yeah.
use
I
your
think
credit
I've heard him
cards.
say, I
Yeah,
think
you got to.
stupid might be his favorite word, actually.
Yes, yes. But that's, he makes the point. If you took the
Yeah.
old what was it, Crown, Larry Burkett, remember that? And you
Yeah.
took him, and if Larry Burkett and Rush Limbaugh had a baby, it's Dave Ramsey. You know what I'm saying? It's just the same truth, but through this really edgy, name calling guy. So, but that I like that thought that we can do this well, and it's not a hidden truth, like you're saying in Genesis, right from the
Yeah.
beginning. Rest, marriage, husbands love your wives as Christ of the church,
Yeah.
laying your life down for her. Loving your kids and children obeying their parents. These aren't hidden truths we have to extrapolate
Yeah.
from obscure parables. These are very clear commandments. And the thought that I can ignore the laws of God, like gravity, you know, like Sabbath,
Yeah.
like putting a priority of covenant relationships over everybody else. And this is hard for pastors because maybe our families
Yes.
don't complain when they don't get what they want. They just grow distant. Versus Sister Ethel, she complains. She wants the music softer and the room warmer, and she talks to you every time before you walk to the platform. Whereas our wives will not do that, or our husbands or our children. So it takes a certain insight. I'll just say this too, real quick. My wife and I were at our family counselors just last weekend, and I've been neglecting this to some degree, not realizing it, but in the safety of the counselor, my wife said, it feels like he's a little, heading in the wrong direction. So my counselor said this: if every time you made your wife's day, I handed you $100 bill, would there be another day where you didn't make your wife's day?
Mm.
Would there ever be another poor man on the planet? Because we're motivated by certain things. Now, it's easy to take for granted those things which you assume will always be there. So there isn't
Yeah.
a Scooby snack, there isn't $100 bill, there isn't a attaboy. But this is what life is made out of: is our commitments, our covenants, our
Yeah.
decisions. And so I now, when I bring my wife an iced tea and to surprise her in the middle of the day, I wait for the $100 bill, and I give you the $100 bill, and she just laughs when I leave the office. But
Yeah.
I I want to re-win her affections on a daily basis. And so I
Yeah.
shouldn't have to do that. I'm fighting a war. I understand that she's fighting a war too, or he's fighting a war
Yeah.
too. So keeping the first things first.
That's
That's
right.
how this works. Yeah.
And so let me give you $100 bill.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you get to be our age,
Yeah.
certain things become very clear.
Hmm.
And that is, um, you will never regret prioritizing
Mm.
the most important relationships in your life.
Yeah.
You will regret
Yeah.
not doing so.
Yeah.
Jim, I've
That's
heard
good.
leader after leader who are accomplished,
Yeah.
um, who have built amazing ministries
Yeah.
that we respect. And it's eye-opening and it's heartbreaking
Mm.
to hear many of them say, I'm in my 60s now, and I realize
Mm.
that although the ministry grew, lots of people were helped,
Mm.
there was almost a sadness in them
Yeah.
for things that they missed
Yeah.
with their kids, things that they
For their
missed
kids.
with their
Yeah.
spouse.
Yeah.
And some of these guys are writing books about it now.
Yeah.
And which I'm really happy about. I'm glad to hear these, if you want to call them fathers in the faith,
Yeah.
saying, "Hey, I built this monstrosity, and now I look back and I think, you know what? If I could do it over, I would have said no a lot more
Mm, yeah.
to opportunities that were presented to me.
Isn't that
And
interesting? Yeah.
yeah, it's just so to me that's the and it's not like money in your hand, but what I'm trying to communicate, Jim, is that you are going to get to a place in your life where you get reflective.
Hmm.
And
Hmm. That's good.
if you've neglected your spouse and your kids in the name of ministry, in the name of taking the next hill, um, I suspect there's going to be some sadness there.
Yeah.
And the opposite is true.
Mm.
If you did prioritize and you did, I love what Rob Ketterling said one time. He said, I told my kids, I'll be at most of your stuff, but I won't be
Yeah.
at all of your stuff.
Right. Right.
I have a calling on my life. He said,
Yeah.
so I said, I don't, he said, it kind of worked out where I got to 70% of their stuff and I had to miss 30% of their stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you can get to your 60s decade and look back. And if you had that kind of track
Hmm.
record, you'll feel good. Like I
Right. Right.
actually did fight for these important relationships. But if that's
Yeah.
flipped,
Right.
my
Right.
suspicion will be that you'll deal with sadness and regret. So
Yeah.
that's the carrot. There's a positive carrot and
Yeah.
then there's kind of a negative carrot to it. And as I was writing this pod, Jim, I just
Mm.
felt so strongly that somebody listening today needs to hear this. Don't give up on the people you care about the most.
Right.
If you're at some sort of impasse with
Mm.
your children or with your spouse, get the outside help you need
Right.
because the devil wants to take a wrecking ball to those relationships.
Yeah.
Don't let him get his way. So I feel a
Mm.
sense of urgency about this second one.
Yeah. Good. Well, and I think too, like you're saying, we're not 30-year-olds reading somebody else's book. You're testifying from your
Yes.
position in life to those that are a decade or two or three behind you, saying you don't want to get here. And the others that have written these books are saying, you're reading their book, saying that there are certain things that are important, but there's certain things that have value beyond what's important. And don't
Hmm.
miss your kid's soccer game because you were busy helping somebody else wear a pair of soccer shoes. You know what I mean? Don't be in Haiti putting shoes on kids' feet when your kids don't have a dad or don't have a mom, to
Yeah.
be there to cheer for them. Yeah. It's good,
Yeah. I
man.
was with I was with a group last week. Did a retreat for a wonderful uh, multi-site church of their one of their campuses.
Hmm.
And we got to this part in our conversation, and I said,
Mm.
I had to apologize to my four boys
Love that. Mm.
because I allowed myself to be so out of control that I
Mm.
got depressed
Mm.
and that I was not available to them for a long time.
Right.
And I can't undo that.
Yeah.
I can't undo it. And so I asked my boys to forgive me for that. And they were
Hmm.
gracious
Yeah.
and they were wonderful about it and loving. But I would rather have you not have to apologize.
Right. Right.
So yeah, we have to fight
Mm.
for the most important relationships in our life. And
Hey,
sometimes it takes that energy, that
yeah.
relentlessness of those waves, the energy it took. And
Did they
sometimes that's what relationships require.
did they look at you like I don't know what you're talking about because it was just normal to
You
them,
know,
or did they?
I think they were a little shocked
Yeah.
by it.
Yeah.
The two
That's
oldest
been.
ones really remember it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
They felt the brunt of that.
Right.
Uh, and the two younger ones, didn't as much.
Right.
But yeah, that was a moment
Yeah. I'll bet.
uh, when we had that conversation. So Jim, let me give you the third.
Yeah.
of 6 insights, and I think we'll wrap it up here, and then we'll catch the next
Yeah.
three next week. Here's the third thing, third insight. This isn't brand new, but boy, it came home to me in a powerful way that God's love for us is bigger than we can comprehend.
Yeah.
We will
Yeah.
never, we will never exhaust the limit of our comprehension of how much He
Mhm.
loves us. So every
Yeah.
morning I would spend time after spending time with the Lord. I would watch the sun come up over the Atlantic, and God is such an
Mm.
amazing genius. It's the
Yeah.
same sun coming over the same body of water, but every day there was something different. There
Yeah.
was something it looked different. The colors were different. And so I'm fixing my attention and I'm one morning and I'm just looking at the sheer size of that body of
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
And Ephesians 3
I was just
immediately
looking it
came
up. I
came
was
to
just looking
mind.
it up. Yeah, like
Yeah.
that's
Go
exactly what
ahead and
came to
read that.
mind.
Go ahead
Yeah.
and read that for us. That
Yeah.
passage in
3:19.
Ephesians 3. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. You may know this love that surpasses
Yeah.
knowledge. Yeah.
And the verses before that say that I want you to experientially know
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
the height and the depth and the breadth and the length of God's love. In other words, Paul's
Yeah.
using terminology,
Yeah.
measurement terminology, but essentially what he is saying is that it's immeasurable. You
Right.
can't you can't measure it. And not only is his love
Mm.
bigger and deeper and wider than the Atlantic Ocean, which is just stunning
Right.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
Um, that
Mm.
love waits for us
Mm.
to drink it in,
Yeah.
to experience it.
Yeah.
So I just read Psalm 103 a couple of days ago, and there's verse 11 says, "For as high as the heavens are above the earth,
Mm.
so great is his love for those who fear him." How high are the
Wow.
heavens above the
Beautiful.
earth?
Hmm.
You can't
Infinitely.
me- you can't
Yeah.
measure it.
Yeah.
There's this expansiveness to it.
Right.
And, you know,
Mm.
the fact that the sun faithfully rose every morning over that salty expanse,
Yeah.
his love isn't contingent. It's vast, but it isn't contingent on our performance.
Right. Right.
It's
Yeah.
contingent on his faithfulness.
Yeah.
The, and as I'm going through the Old Testament this time around, Jim, I'm seeing so many references to
Mm.
that God keeps his covenant of love, that
Yeah.
God's love is unfailing and on and on and on,
Yeah.
uh, that it endures forever. It's just,
Mm.
I think we need to be, I'm just going to say, I need to be reminded on a regular basis. I need to remind myself on a regular basis how much bigger God's love is
Yeah.
than I'm only getting a fraction of it and
Yeah.
understanding a fraction of it. And so, look, if I operate from love instead of for love,
Yeah.
I'm going to make better decisions as a
Oh,
pastor.
yeah. Yeah. Right.
I'm going to be a better pastor.
Yep.
I'll be more secure. Um,
Yeah.
People won't be able to influence my joy and happiness as much.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the devil won't be able to mess with me
Yeah.
as much.
Right.
And so I think the devil,
Mm.
one of the number one things the devil tries to steal from you and I, Jim, is the assurance that we are perfectly and completely loved. And
Yes.
he's an overdrive trying to
Yeah.
steal that
Yes.
from people, especially from God's
Yeah.
leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Absolutely. That's beautiful. Yeah. It seems like that's what the devil's after. And was it Matthew 4 where he's tempting Jesus? If you really are the Son of
that's
God,
yeah,
then
he's going after
perform.
him.
Yeah. And he's
Yep,
like, hey, it's written. And I think coming back to that for our own souls, becoming who God says I am, not who an influencer, a parent, a coach, a drill sergeant, a spouse, a child says you are. you really can't be you until you hear who God says you are.
Hmm.
Because if somebody can give it to you, then somebody can take it away. Or you need another to reaffirm that it's an endless loop. So I love that thought
Yeah.
of working from the love of God, like the fruit of that love being your
Yeah.
life, not if I'm just good enough to earn it. And
Right.
there was a at the Last Supper when John lays his head on Jesus's breast and hears his heartbeat. Like he has that moniker. He's the disciple whom Jesus loves. And we've talked about this before, but
Yeah.
why is it the disciple whom Jesus loves? Is it because Peter's such a mess up and Matthew used to be a tax collector and Judas is going to betray him and John's not that way? I don't think it is. I think John's the disciple that Jesus loves because John was the disciple that let Jesus love him. There
There
just
you
didn't
go.
seem to be a problem for,
Yeah.
it'd be weird if you were out camping and all of a sudden I just lean over and put my head in your breast. You'd be like, well, what are you doing? You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
there's an intimacy there. Maybe culturally it wasn't a big deal. Here it'd be weird, but
Yeah.
it, he picked the seat next to Jesus, his proximity to him, his intimacy with
Yeah.
him. And I think that there was that, I don't know, he didn't let him. I don't think John was loved by Jesus more. I think that John just let Jesus love him more, and
Yes.
that made a difference.
Agreed. And John, I think John got to the revelation of Jesus' love
Mhm.
for him before any of the
Yeah.
others.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was first to that party. And so and
Mm.
so we hope today has been encouraging to you. Pastor, you're probably more tired than you think. Um, Fight for good relationship with your spouse, with your kids, if you're married,
Yeah. Yeah.
and learn how to let God love you. God
Mm.
created you primarily not to do. He created
Mm.
you primarily so he could love you.
Yeah.
So let him do that. Let let God love you. Experience his love. Find those places where you experience his love and visit them. And I think that lead better, and you'll lead longer, and you'll enjoy it more.
Yes, you will. Love it, John. Thank you. I think that we would do well to send you away on vacation maybe twice a year, right, versus once, just to have these reflections. These reflections don't come when you have a to-do list. Get reflections. Get 3 reflections by 2 o'clock this afternoon. They come when you're just inhaling,
Yeah,
the
that's right.
goodness of God, and then when you exhale, these sort of things come out. So maybe you don't have a month off. Those who are listening and watching right now, but it's okay to take an hour off. I mean, I know John does an exercise where there's literally 3 minutes. Take 3 minutes of holding Jesus's hand, sitting in silence, and just enjoying his presence and see what God can do in 3 minutes.
Yeah,
We can't, he's not limited by space, time, but we have to be listening to hear. That's the way it works. So
that's
thanks,
right.
John, for this. And those of you that are watching and listening, we just also say this to you. If you're like, I think I knew all these things. The problem's not in the knowing, the problem's in the applying. Remember
Hmm.
Proverbs 27:17 is one man sharpens another. So iron sharpens iron. We are called to live in community. And sometimes the best relationship is one that has some skin in the game. Or I found the best way to get the best from people is to pay them something or charge them something. That's just the way it
Hmm.
works. There's a different level of relationship and accountability when there's a different exchange than just each other's time. So I'd encourage you. Converge coaching, if it specializes in anything, it's helping people find the right pace. It's helping people appreciate their families. It's helping people discover God's love. And you as a leader are not unique in that these things are going to try to be stolen from you. And you're going to need some help. You're going to need some guardrails. You're going to need some boundaries. You're going to need some language. You're going to need some permission. I think that as much as anything else, saying it's okay to take a
That's
day
a good word.
off. Like it doesn't feel like it. Well, take it from people who've been doing this for decades. It is okay, and it's mandatory. It's not an option. So if we can help in any way, go to convergecoach.com and you'll see right at the top of there. Just schedule a 30-minute call. Let's spend some time hanging out. See if there isn't something more that can happen from there, and we would look forward to that. So God bless you. Our dear watchers and listeners, may you just keep going for it. And again, this drops on a Tuesday. And if you're still in the ministry on Tuesday, that means you made it past Monday, which means you're not a quitter. God bless you as you continue to lead from alignment.